I'm Dr. Alison Grimston. I'm a GP in Hailsham and a holistic doctor with interest in complementary and alternative medicines.
I'm semi-retired and a long-term escapee from corporate life.
I've been in Brighton for just over 10 years now. I'm from Glasgow originally.
I'm originally from Finland. I've been living in England for 20 years and I'm a self-employed photographer.
I work teaching. I teach business in London.
I work as a web designer and also I work as an astrology coach.
And I specialise in leadership development and executive coaching.
I run a team of talent finders, basically, graduates from Russell Group universities.
I came to Toastmasters and didn't know anything about the club till I found it in the Argus.
I edit a magazine called Environmental Finance, and it was actually taking on that job about 2.5 years ago, which led me to Toastmasters, because it quickly became apparent that the job was going to entail quite a lot of public speaking and occasional media work, and I had a real fear of public speaking, and I realised I had to do something to address this. I was told about Toastmasters by my brother, who'd only been to one of them, but he said that it would be the kind of thing that could help me.
I've been really rather frightened of public speaking, because public speaking as a scientific researcher is all about standing on stage and having your work pulled apart.
Somehow, all throughout my life, I'd always managed to avoid any situations where I'd have to do public speaking. And when my brother asked me to be his best man, obviously there was no getting out of that.
My job meant that I presented to people. I was managing groups of team managers and a large group of people. But I never felt particularly comfortable giving presentations, particularly when I had to give presentations to senior management.
I can talk about psychology without coming up for air for several months at a time, but people are paying me. I want to do a good job. I want them to go away thinking, that was great, that was money well spent.
I wanted to improve my public speaking.
I've been asked by a friend to be the best man, and sort of combining my stammer and chronic fear of public speaking, I thought it was time to see, if there are some things that can be done.
I wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone.
And around about the same time I got promoted at work to manager, so I had to start doing presentations and chairing meetings and things like that. So I thought, right, now's the time I need to look into something, and not just one-to-one tuition, but I thought, get some opportunities to actually speak to an audience. So I just typed in public speaking in Brighton, and the first thing that came up was Toastmasters.
And when I googled public speaking, Toastmasters came up.
They said, try Toastmasters, so I googled it.
I thought, I've heard of Toastmasters, I wonder if there's one in Brighton, and I found it, went to the website and thought, I'm going to join them.
I do remember the first time, because when I came in, I was welcomed, immediately welcomed.
I turned up late, and I don't think I spoke at all.
I turned up not knowing what to expect and not knowing anybody in the room, and I stood up for the warm-up, and then I also volunteered for table topics. And at the end of the evening, I realised that I had stood up twice in front of a group of 20 or 30 strangers, and I was still alive.
I spoke during the warm-up, yes. I didn't do the table topics.
The warm-up, which is great. This is something where you're made to speak at the beginning of the event, of the session, to get people into the swing of things.
It snakes along the line, getting closer and closer to you, and I got more and more nervous. And by the time it came to me, I actually couldn't speak, so I couldn't do it.
It's the first night nerves. It's the tension. It's the show. It's okay. It's just to recognise. Everybody gets nervous.
Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Mr. President, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and very welcome guests.
The most difficult is the icebreaker speech, and it's also my favourite part of Toastmasters, seeing people stand up and give their first speech. It's a real plunge into the unknown. It takes a lot of, it's harder for some people than others, I think, but it takes some guts to stand up there and give your first speech, and I love it just for that reason.
It's about who I am, my childhood in Glasgow, The fact that I come from a huge sort of Irish Catholic Scottish family, there's millions of us.
All about yourself and your life history and what you hope to achieve from the club.
I was very nervous, as everyone is when you do your first speech.
I had to speak faster because I thought, speaking faster, it gets over faster.
I was probably a bit too relaxed actually.
I'd practiced quite a lot beforehand.
And I did it just on a period of my life when I was living in Mombasa in Kenya, and it went well, I thought.
The thing that went wrong was that I hadn't practiced with my nose, and I knew that there were a couple of places during the speech that I kind of often forgot what's the next bit.
I'm quite hard on myself, so I wanted to do the best that I could.
I did feel nervous when I came to Brighton, the first speech I gave.
There's quite often a theme of a personal struggle with the icebreaker.
I was so excited about the fact that I'd overcome my absolute terror about speaking up in front of people.
The speeches are not prescribed, so the objectives are, and those obviously contribute to the skills you learn, but the speeches I listen to absolutely blow my socks off, some of them.
Those speeches that people give are very interesting because you're getting them from a variety of backgrounds. It's not just the same type of person. Right. And that's fascinating, that you'll get something on technology, or you'll get something on gardening, or you'll get something on Hungary.
Were you here when I gave that one on the different styles of song?
I used to come along, actually, not even so much. To come along and listen to some of the stories and listen to the speeches.
I think when I started, I just thought it was a question of having confidence in speaking. And what was quite interesting was there are lots of aspects to it, and even if you can't crack every single one, if you can crack a lot of them, your confidence gradually builds just on these little techniques.
So with how to say it, it's about turns of phrase, making things very clear.
And structure and timing is so important.
Planning how you can use your voice for effect.
I have a picture memory, so I need to write it down and just put it in front of me like this. I can just look at it for half an hour and it's in my head.
I'll probably practice maybe once or twice, maybe during the day.
It teaches you about timekeeping and planning and engaging with people. When I first joined and my manuals arrived in the post and I started looking through them, I was completely amazed how excellent they are for an absolute fraction of the cost that they would cost you to do a course anywhere.
I haven't really thought about it. I'm just trying to summon up the courage to speak in front of an audience as many times as I can, basically, and hope that I become more relaxed and more proficient at doing so. I'm not too bothered about following the manual.
It was terrifying, but I was really glad that I did it, and especially because I got really nice positive feedback.
The role, though, that I really enjoy most of all is that of evaluator, and the reason is that particular role has a lasting impact on speakers. If they get a good evaluation of their speech, they feel motivated to carry on with the program.
Other people giving you feedback how you can improve and what you did well also. It's important to have that. But the constructive criticism comes from, that you can improve on that, you can do better there.
I think just the process of watching people, evaluating people, I found helpful as well, because it made me watch more closely than I otherwise would, and watching what people did makes you think about how you're doing it.
Peer assessment, that really, really made a mark on me. That no one was being judged.
People also do really appreciate, I think, receiving that feedback.
Friends helping friends.
I think from my first or second meeting onwards, I found it really helpful that seeing other people working on their speaking skills, and I started thinking of it in that way, that when you have to present something or when you're talking in public, think of it as a process of improving your skills rather than the discrete event of I am giving a speech, where it's kind of a make or break. If you do it badly, you've done it badly, it's terrible. If you start thinking about it as a process, if it goes badly, just think what you need to learn from it and what you need to do differently next time. That helped me almost immediately.
I have deliberately talked about anything but psychology to stretch and challenge myself, and that's been great. I've benefited a lot from that.
I may have come to it for the specific purpose of this blessed man's speech, which I prepared for, but there's this more long-term reason to continue to work on controlling my stammer, and I think it's a great place to do that.
I'm becoming gradually less nervous, but it's incremental, and at the moment I still am noticeably nervous.
I'm doing a bit at the club tonight, this evening, and I'm nervous already.
Well, I've got to do a little bit as well. I'm nervous. How about you, Pat?
Yeah, I get nervous too. It's one of the things I've noticed from my icebreaker onwards. After the first couple of Toastmasters meetings that I was at, where I couldn't get to sleep till about 4 o'clock in the morning because of the adrenaline that was surging through my system, and I still get that.
My 9th or 10th speech was about the autonomic responses we have, the adrenaline release when we're faced with a pack chasing, and you know, it's usually, you know, the hunting pack and the prey. And the prey is usually faced with all of the pack facing them, and that's what kicks off this autonomic response in your brain to release adrenaline for fight, flight and pain relief.
One of the things I find is that Toastmasters structures help me to manage my nerves. I don't think the nerves will ever go away, and that's probably a good thing, even though I don't find it being nervous is comforting or comfortable, but learning how to manage them is.
It's sort of practice, isn't it? I think subconsciously you learn that, having done it a lot of times in front of a lot of people, you just think, well, it's not going to be any worse than the last time.
What's the saying? If it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you.
The little techniques that I tell other people to use, I actually use them. You know, the deep breathing. You know, if I can, I'll run from the back of the hall to the speaking position to get rid of that adrenaline.
If the Toastmaster of the evening introduces me in the time-honoured Toastmasters way, it gives me a few moments to compose myself, get myself centred, and then launch into my speech.
I used to be really nervous, even just about making a point in a meeting. I wouldn't want to. If I didn't feel it was a very important point, I wouldn't bother, because I didn't want to actually do the speaking. And now that kind of stuff's certainly completely gone.
Getting the butterflies to fly in formation. But you need those butterflies.